All right there. Hello there, thrill seekers. And today I am wearing my Ultraman. What do you call these kind of jackets? I don't know. I got it from a former coworker at Tsuburaya Productions when I was in Japan earlier this year. Can you see it? So I wanted to do a little episode on the channel that this is a topic I could have put in my Zen of Godzilla book that I proposed and then never finished. I've talked about it a little bit on this video channel, and if you go to my blog hardcorezen.info, there are 3 or 4 chapters that I wrote for that book that I just couldn't get any further. But last night I was watching something and I thought, well, there might be another chapter for that book, although I don't know if I'll ever finish it. And it was from this. This just came out from Mill Creek, which is the DVD company, and it is the 55th anniversary collection of the show Ultra 7. Now, Ultra 7 was the third TV series produced by Tsuburaya Productions. The first was Ultra Q, the second was Ultraman, and the third was Ultra 7. So the character Ultra 7, who looks like that, has appeared in numerous other Ultraman series, and this DVD set collects all those, I don't think it collects everything that Ultra 7 appeared in, but it collects almost everything that Ultra 7 ever appeared in, right from the beginning, when he was first introduced in 1967, to Ultraman Orb, which I think might be the latest Ultraman show. It's definitely one of the more recent ones. I don't really follow what's going on with Ultraman much anymore. But last night, I just happened to put on, let's see, disc 3 of this set, and the episodes are called, I watched episode 13 and 14 of a series called Ultraman Ace, called Execution 5 Ultra Brothers and 5 Stars Scattered in the Galaxy. And the reason these 2 episodes are kind of important, oh, by the way, you can also, if you want to get them otherwise, Mill Creek also put this out. Mill Creek doesn't pay me. Actually, they did send me a few free DVDs or Blu-rays because I helped them out with trying to track down some of the material, which Tsuburaya Productions themselves didn't know where it was, but I knew where some of it was. The reason these episodes are interesting and might be interesting to you is because I was an American Buddhist working for a company run by Japanese Christians, which I always thought was kind of funny. In this book right here, Eiji Tsuburaya, Master of Monsters by August Ragone, you can read on pages 28 and 29 a little bit about the Christianity in Tsuburaya Productions. What happened was this. Sometime in the early 1940s, after World War II, well, no, wait a minute, it was by 1944, so sometime during the war, my gosh, I just realized that as I was speaking it out loud. Let me make sure I'm getting this reference right. Yep. Sometime during World War II, Masano Tsuburaya, who was Eiji Tsuburaya's wife, was converted to Catholicism by her sister, who had become a Catholic. In Japan, often people describe themselves as Kiristo-Kyoto, Kiristo-Kyo, or Kiristo-Kyoto. I think the proper term would be Kiristo-Kyoto, which would mean a student of Christianity, which is the way you say you're Christian. But I'm pretty sure most of the people I heard would just say Kiristo-Kyo. And they'll say they're Kiristo-Kyo, which means Christian, literally, but what they generally mean is that they're Catholic. I'd have to go look this up to find out, but it just seems to me from my eyeball reference living in Japan that most Japanese Christians are actually Catholic, and most Korean Christians are Presbyterian. I don't know why. I should look this up. If I do write this up for a book, I'll probably have to look all that stuff up. But okay, sometime in the 40s, she became a Christian, his wife, Eiji Tsuburaya. Now, Eiji Tsuburaya, let's go back a little bit, was the founder of the company that I worked for, Tsuburaya Productions. That's him on the set of Ultraman right there. Eiji Tsuburaya is most famous in America not for his work on Ultraman, but for his work on Godzilla. There he is on the set of the second Godzilla film, often known in the United States as Gigantus the Fire Monster. For some reason, they didn't want to use the name Godzilla on the sequel. That's him in front of Godzilla, and that's the monster Anguillus behind him. So Eiji Tsuburaya was the special effects director for all of the classic Godzilla films, from the first one in 1954 up until he died in 1970. He was the special effects director for those films. In 1963, Eiji started his own company, and that was the company I worked for, Tsuburaya Productions. Tsuburaya Productions did not make Godzilla films, and it's hard not to cause confusion about this because Godzilla is the thing that Eiji Tsuburaya is most known for. So I often describe the place I worked for as the company founded by the creator of Godzilla, which is not exactly correct. There were several people who created Godzilla, but that's my shorthand for it. Tsuburaya Productions, though, didn't own the copyrights or anything on the Godzilla films. They produced a series called Ultraman, which I'll show you again. There's Ultraman, which was a show about a 150-foot tall superhero who kills and vanquishes Godzilla-sized monsters. There's Ultraman. Now, because Eiji Tsuburaya had converted to Christianity, a bunch of people around him also converted to Christianity. So it went like this. Masano, his wife's sister, had converted to Christianity. Then Masano, his wife, converted to Christianity. Then Eiji converted to Christianity. Then, because Eiji had become Christian, a bunch of people around him converted to Christianity. And so there were a number of people, mostly the older guys at Tsuburaya Productions, who were Christians. Now, I was never quite sure who were the Christians. I know that Koichi Takano, who was the special effects director for most of the original Ultraman series, and who later became the head of the department where I worked, he was a Christian. Pretty sure. And I'm pretty sure Kazuho Mitsuda, who was a director, not a special effects director, but just the director of the other segments for a lot of Ultraman shows, including most of the Ultra 7 series, which is what I was showing you before. He was a Christian, I think. In Japan, it is considered very poor taste to discuss your religious affiliation in public. In the United States, there is that taboo too, but in Japan, it is much stronger than it is in the United States. So it wouldn't come up very often. I think people might have been felt more free to express it to me because I was an American and I might not take it so badly. But to talk about your religion at your office in Japan would be, even a little bit, even just mentioning it, would feel a bit like it would feel if somebody in an American office just started handing you, I don't know, Jehovah's Witnesses pamphlets and started witnessing to you right there on the spot. They'd think, oh my God, I got to stay away from this guy. He's just a fanatic. So it wasn't discussed very much. But people at Tsuburaya Productions knew that I was a Buddhist, not because I talked about it all the time, but because it would come up sometimes. And the way it came up mostly was a little trick that I figured out, which was I was a vegetarian. I still am a vegetarian. And in Japan, vegetarianism is pretty uncommon and not well understood. And I tried different ways of explaining my vegetarianism, but then I hit on the magic formula, which is to tell Japanese people that I'm a vegetarian because I'm Buddhist. And if you tell Japanese people you're a vegetarian because you're Buddhist, Ziggy, he must have seen a squirrel or something again. Ziggy, let me finish my video. Anyway, if you tell a Japanese person you're vegetarian because you're Buddhist, they'll kind of leave you alone and be like, okay, and help you, find the things you can eat and stuff. If you tell them you're vegetarian for any other reason, they're probably going to try to feed you a hamburger or something, or try to talk you out of it or something like that. So, that's when it would normally come up. I would say, well, I'm a vegetarian because I'm a Buddhist, and that way people knew I was into Buddhism, and also because I occasionally would take days off work to go to retreats and things. And then I really outed myself when I came back from one of those retreats with a shaved head. I had to shave my head in order to officially become a monk within the Soto Shu, the big sort of Vatican-like organization that they have in Japan that oversees all that stuff. My teacher, Nishijima Roshi, didn't care whether I shaved my head or not. He said shaving your head is just the habit of Buddhist monks. It's not a necessity. To the people at the Soto Shu, it was a necessity. So I came back one day on a Tuesday, because the retreats were usually Saturday, Sunday, Monday, with a shaved head because I'd done this ordination. And then everybody knew. So I was kind of out. And I was working for this company who were Japanese Christians. Now, one of the things that I thought was really interesting was that the way they expressed their Christianity would probably be kind of shocking and maybe even totally unacceptable to a lot of American Christians. One of the ways that's kind of subtle is in the picture I just showed you. That's Ultraman using his Specium Beam, which is his most powerful weapon that he usually vanquishes the monsters with. And as you can see, he makes his arms in the shape of a cross. And that was a little tribute to Eiji Tsuburaya's Christianity. So that one was kind of subtle. In Ultra 7, though, the 1967 series that followed Ultraman. Ultraman was on in Japan from 1966 through 67. Ultra 7 started in 67 through 68. And in one of the episodes of Ultra 7 gets crucified by an alien whose name is Guts. I don't know. So in that episode, he's crucified in this sort of plexiglass-looking cross that kind of hangs in the sky, and everybody can see him crucified there up in the sky in this plexiglass cross. And then that's a sort of a psych op, as the kids would call it these days, by Alien Guts to say, look, I've defeated your hero, and I'm going to take over your planet. And of course, Ultra 7 wins in the end, but that's a whole other thing. Now, that one was semi-subtle. I don't know if it's really that subtle, but it wasn't as overt as the one I want to talk to you about. But the interesting thing about that particular episode is that TBS, which was a cable... Remember cable TV? Back in the old days, you had cable TV. We used to watch it. Anyway, it was a cable TV channel that showed Ultra 7, and apparently they premiered that particular episode where Ultra 7 gets crucified on Easter Sunday. I don't know what year it was, but I remember hearing how they broadcast it on Easter Sunday. I don't know if that was deliberate or not, but it's kind of funny that they happened to do that. Now, the episodes I watched were from Ultraman Ace, and Ultraman Ace was the 1973 entry into the Ultraman saga. And in episodes 13 and 14, let me make sure I got that right. Yeah, it's episodes 13 and 14. In episodes 13 and 14 of Ultraman Ace, 4 of the Ultra Brothers are crucified on a planet called Golgotha. And one of the characters in the show says, oh, Golgotha, isn't that the name of the hill on which Christ was crucified? Yes, somebody says, that's what we named the planet for. I don't know why they named it, but it's Golgotha, how we'd pronounce it. I think it's the proper way we'd pronounce it, but the Japanese can't really do the TH sound, so it becomes Golgotha. So he's crucified on planet Golgotha by this alien beast who is in charge of a monster who is called Baraba. So Baraba is obviously from Barabbas, who was the guy who was, when Pilate says, I'll release Jesus or I'll release Barabbas, and then they release Barabbas. That's the story there. So the monster is called Baraba. For some reason, I don't quite understand, the official transliteration of his name in English is Varava with a V, but it should be Baraba. I don't know I would have corrected that if I would have been there when they decided that. But anyway, there you go. So these scenes of crucifixion, of the ultras being crucified, were intended as kind of, I don't know how to put it, like tributes to Christianity, like a kind of, maybe even not exactly an advertisement for Christianity, but they were intended to be respectful sort of depictions that came from their faith in Jesus. So we look at this and we go, oh my God, I think if these shows were shown in the Bible Belt in the U.S., there would have been uproar back in the 70s when they were made. I don't know, nowadays they might be able to get away with it a little easier, but it would still raise a lot of eyebrows. I think people would get kind of upset. Japanese children's television, by the way, is not like American children's television. In the episode that I watched, the two-parter, episode 13 and 14 of Ultraman Ace, one of the first things that happens is this monster appears in kind of semi-visible form to two young kids who are brothers. One appears to be maybe around 12 to 14 years old, and the other appears to be 8 or 10 years old. And they're having an argument, and just then the monster appears, and then the older brother tries to save his younger brother from the monster and gets killed. I mean, they just flat out, they show blood dripping off of him, and he's like, laying there, dead. And they actually say, yeah, he was killed by the monster. And then this little kid whose brother was killed by the monster spends the entire episode wanting to get revenge by killing the monster that's attacking Tokyo, Baraba, the one named after Barabbas. So in American television, it's difficult to show children in danger. I remember, because it was part of my job to know these things, that there are specific rules about showing children in danger for American children's television, and you can never show a child being killed, which Tsuburaya Productions did all the time. And I think we kind of stopped that because I remember making the company aware of some of these regulations, and they really wanted to sell the shows overseas. So they stopped doing that in the 90s when I was there. But if you look in their old shows from the 60s and 70s, kids are just getting slaughtered all over the place. And the other thing that happens is when Ultraman Ace finally defeats, I'm giving you a spoiler alert, Ultraman Ace finally does defeat Baraba. So, yeah, I mean, you figured that was going to happen. But actually, the episode is pretty suspenseful. Even though I knew that was going to happen, I hadn't watched the episode for a few years, and I was kind of like on the edge of my seat a little bit last night, wondering how Ultraman Ace was going to finally defeat this monster. But he defeats him by chopping off his head, which is another thing Tsuburaya Productions used to do all the time with their monsters. They'd chop off their heads, which you just can't do on a children's program in the U.S. There's no way we would have been able to sell shows in which monsters got their heads chopped off to American television. And I remember pointing that out to them. It's like, no more heads chopped off, when I was working for the company in the 90s and advising them on how they might be able to sell the shows in America. But the point I'm kind of trying to make here is that this kind of shows you that Japanese expressions of Christianity, or Japanese understanding of Christianity, is quite different from the American or European, or probably anywhere in the West, Australia, South America, those kind of places. It's very different from the way we understand Christianity, and what they would find to be offensive to Christians, or not offensive to Christians, as the case may be, would be different. We, American Christians, I think, would be very offended by the sight of this superhero getting crucified. Imagine if you'd had Superman get crucified, or I don't know, Captain America get crucified. I mean, my God, you'd never hear the end of it. But over there, it was considered to be actually something that was a positive expression of Christian faith. the show itself is not overtly Christian. They just bring in those, the alien is called Baraba and the planet is called Golgotha, and there's a crucifixion. But other than that, there's no sort of like proselytizing that goes on in the episode, and they never did that in any of the Ultraman shows. But still, it was considered to be like a nice tribute to Christianity. Like, here's something positive, and here's something we're showing. So that it was something that was a bit of an eye-opener to me to see this, and it made me think about how we in America and the rest of the West interpret Buddhism is quite different, and then the way we express our Buddhism is quite different from the way people in Asia often do and the way people in Japan do. And that doesn't mean it's invalid, it just means it's a different way of doing it. It kind of has to do with the intention behind it and what you're really trying to show or to point out. And I just thought that was interesting. I might take the transcript of this video and see if I can turn it into a chapter. Oh, Ziggy's peeing behind me again. He always does that, but I guess my head was blocking him out that time. But anyway, and you didn't have to know. I didn't have to tell you. But anyway, so what was I saying? I was saying something like it was a bit of an eye-opener to see the way they expressed Christianity. And it made me think that the way we express Buddhism is also probably very different. I remember there was a big hubbub a few years ago about a guy who tried to come to Singapore, and he happened to have a Buddha tattoo, and they didn't want to let him in because that was offensive to Buddhists, and we would consider that Buddha tattoo to be kind of like, cool, I'm a Buddhist. But they thought that would be offensive to the local Buddhists over there. You probably wouldn't get that kind of reaction in Japan, since they tend to take their religions very kind of lightly. They don't really get overly worked up or offended by things like that. But I think our way of expressing Buddhism is just our cultural way of expressing it. So I think it's valid in its own right, even though it might be different from the way it would be done in Asia. And I just, I don't know, I just wanted to make a little video about that and show this to you, because I thought it was kind of interesting. And it was kind of weird to be a Buddhist, an American Buddhist among a bunch of Japanese Christians. There was never any sort of discussion about it, and they didn't try to convert me to Christianity, but I think they thought it was... I think they accepted my being an American Buddhist a bit better than other Japanese people might have, because they were Japanese Christians. So they were kind of acclimated to this idea of cross-cultural religious conversions, and it didn't weird them out at all that I was an American who was a Buddhist. It never really came up much, though, except, as I said, in terms of my vegetarianism and in terms of me occasionally taking days off work to go do retreats and things like that. But nobody ever gave me a hassle about it or anything. It was just, there's that weird American Buddhist who works for us. So there you go. That's my little stuff about Japanese Christians versus American Buddhists, and I hope you enjoyed it. If you want to contribute to me making more of these kind of videos, you can go to the URL that you're seeing on the screen below, which is hardcorezen.info/donate. That is hardcorezen.info/donate. There you will find links to my PayPal and my Patreon accounts. Those are my main ways of making a living, and I appreciate your support. But as always, you don't got to support me if you don't want to. All right, we will see you next time. Have a good time all the time. Bye. Hey, Ziggy Boo Boo. Hey, Ziggy. You enjoying sitting in the sun? You getting some vitamin D? You're sucking up some vitamin D? You want to go look for cats? We found a cat yesterday, right? We might find another one today. Let's go see.